Hi everyone, and I'm here with the one and only, my creator.
Me.
Yeah, him. And you may recognize him from episode. Do you know what the episode number is of your
Of
Supernatural debut?
No, I have no idea.
The episode Swap Meet from Supernatural. Or you may recognize him from my surgery vlogs, eating oatmeal. And today I wanted to ask my dad some questions about me being trans and his reactions to it. These are questions that I have kind of wondered about before but never actually gotten around to asking. So today we're going to do just that.
Okay.
So I never came out to you. This
No.
is something that I think I've probably mentioned this on my channel before. I never actually came out to anyone in my family except my mom and maybe two of my brothers. Whoever was at the dining room table at that time. And it was very, very casual. It wasn't even to me, like, I didn't even think of it as a coming out. It just sort of, it was more of a putting the dots together. So Mama then came out to you for me, pretty much. And so I'm curious, what was that conversation like? What was your reaction? Because I never really witnessed your reaction to it in any
true.
shape or form.
Yeah, well, it was odd. And actually, not only was I not at the dinner table when you made this announcement, Spencer's girlfriend at the time, Andrea, was there.
Yes.
So you came out to Andrea, Spencer's ex-girlfriend, before you ever came out to me. So I was a little put off by that. I thought the first thing you do is you start introspecting and say, what kind of ogre am I that my daughter can't come out to me?
So
She
sad.
feels safest that she's going to come out when I'm not in the room. So I felt, I took stock of that, and I thought, well, maybe there's something about me. Maybe she doesn't trust that I'll be okay with this, or maybe she fears my reaction, or I don't know. I don't know. It's a tricky thing, but I respected the fact that you came. And when your mother told me, it was shocking to me, honestly, because I never suspected. I never suspected that you were trans growing up. So I had. It took me a while to sort of wrap my head around the veracity, the truth of it. It took me a while to see it. So, but the first was more like shock, some disbelief, thinking, okay, why is Boone looking for attention this way? But then things have evolved from there.
Yes, it's definitely. That was like almost 5 years ago to the dot. I think it was around this month in 2015. That's so interesting to me because I never saw it that way at all. My coming out for me was almost me coming out to myself because I understood this about me for a long time, but I didn't have the words to describe it at all. So it was more me figuring out, oh, I can actually label myself this way. So, but yeah, I only really had that interaction with Mama mostly, and then you then came out basically to the rest of our family for me. Like you talked to your relatives.
Yeah, I have more relatives in my immediate family than Kelly does, so there would be more communication there.
So,
but why were
yeah.
you more comfortable in coming out with Andrea than you were with me? That's
I
what
wasn't.
I don't understand.
That's the thing.
No?
I wasn't. She just happened to be there. It came up in conversation somehow, and I cannot for the life of me remember how, but I basically just said that I felt more comfortable being a woman, or I've always wanted to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about like the differences in the lived experiences of men and women, probably.
Okay.
And it felt very natural how it came up, and I think then to them, that was much more of a significant thing to say than it felt for me. And then in the next few days, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm transgender, and I should look at this more. So that kind of leads me into another question I was going to ask.
All right.
What was it like telling everybody else in your family? Because I also didn't witness their reaction.
Yeah, it was interesting. My dad was alive then, of course, when I spoke to him and my mom. What was it like? It kind of, because it switches. All of a sudden I become the protector, I become the father. I
Right.
become the one who is saying, like, you better not judge, or you better understand this, or you have to look at this with an open mind.
Yeah.
So, because I had to ask them to do the things that I'd already sort of tried to process. But it was not difficult. My mother probably was less understanding than my father at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny, and they're older British folks coming from a completely different generation, and my brothers were as good I think as your brothers were with it. And I have two brothers, and they both were very accepting and understanding. I think they heard it. I think it takes a while to process, but I don't remember. I just really remember my mother being a little bit like not certain of it. She really couldn't take it in. She couldn't believe the truth of it. which is hard for everybody. It was hard for me all through the process, so I understand that. And I think too, there's fear involved. When you get somebody who has a pushback that loves somebody, there's probably a fear of
Oh, definitely.
not being a healthy life choice, not knowing that it's not a choice, but just a circumstance, a healthy life circumstance, because obviously the transgender community is still a marginalized community, and so it's a huge thing. It's a difference that you weren't expecting, and so I can imagine people would have some resistance to it, just feeling, no, she'd be better like a boy. She should just stay a boy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way, of course, but you have to have some respect for people's process. So, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't onerous. I didn't feel as though I had a big burden of responsibility, and I think I was very protective of you, mostly, which is I think became my role in the transition, is being protective of you and your, who you are.
Well, I appreciate it because that meant I didn't have to come out to nearly as many people. In fact, I feel like my entire coming out process was pretty much you and Mama handled that for me and told everyone for me. And no, I definitely didn't get any negative reactions from the family members. Like, I never experienced anyone having weird reactions. And it was sort of weird because by the time I talked to anyone in the family down the road, I had sort of been through my transition in some way or another, so there was no they didn't really watch it because we don't keep in contact with that much of the family super actively. Mm-hmm. So it was weird to sort of just jump from being Boone the boy to Boone the girl in the span of a couple years, and then not seeing their immediate reaction. But it's good to know that it went at least fairly smoothly.
Yeah, it's very smoothly, and I think the biggest problem was pronouns for a long time.
Yeah.
But I was hard with me too. I mean, I miffed the pronouns often, and I think a lot of it is habitual and not necessarily resistance, but there could be elements of both too.
It's hard to say. It's definitely it's a change that's getting used to. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's
for sure. Oh yeah, this is a good one. So, you mentioned that you didn't. It was somewhat of a shock to hear that I was trans from Mamo.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious because a lot of people I remember as a child, a lot of people, specifically I want to say adults in my life, had expressed in one way or another that they thought that I was gay at the
Really?
time. Yeah, I remember, or even I found out after the fact, after coming out, and I had kids thought it too. Like, there was definitely people in my life growing up that had that expectation. I think a lot of people had some kind of instinct that there was something a little bit just different. There was something there, but not. I don't think most people registered that as being trans because that was just not nearly as widely known as anything else.
Right.
So I'm curious if you ever had thoughts that I might have been gay, or if you even just had any sort of inkling or theory around me being kind of a little bit different than my brothers in some ways, expressing my fashion a little bit, playing with Polly Pockets, how that registered in your...
They were all, but no, I never actually, just to be straight to the point, no, I never thought you were gay. I never thought this child may be gay. I don't remember having that thought. Every once in a while, you thinking about your children, maybe they're gay, I don't know. And obviously, I have lots of gay friends. I come from the theater, and so it was never an issue. But definitely, like the year you wanted the sewing machine for your birthday or for Christmas, whatever that was.
Yeah,
I always just struck it up. But also, too, you were I just thought you were sort of like a gender warrior or a soji warrior in a way that, like playing baseball, you just wouldn't be like one of the boys.
Yeah.
Because that typical boy behavior, I think, repelled you a little bit, or you didn't attach to it, maybe is a better way to say it. And I'd noticed it, and I just thought, okay, here's somebody who is really for gender equity. Somebody who doesn't like these gender line differences. So that was more. I thought it was more of like a social conscience or a social warrior sort of take, even as a young person. And like even in wanting a sewing machine, it seemed to me like it's like boys can have sewing machines. And I thought, okay, you never sewed, you never used it, but you wanted the right to have it. It wasn't like you had a penchant for sewing. But there was all these things, and you're also the fourth child, and as far as I can tell, I only have one set of children, and you being the fourth and last, you were louder, you were more extroverted, and I thought you fought harder to get attention. So I wasn't really sure of your psychology or makeup, but it seemed to me that a lot of things you did might have been attention seeking, or your way as the fourth child to make your voice heard, as you had three older, louder, more rough-hewn siblings there. So nah, I never thought you were gay. But then for the longest time, I didn't think you were trans either. And then I didn't know what to think. And it took me a while to get to understanding your being a girl and being transgender and attaching to it.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest fear, and this probably goes beyond the question you asked me, but the biggest fear is that uh, this is a phase, or this is a this it's just something. It's an acting out, or an ideology that's not true. And what if we go through with these real insane physical changes that later you would turn to me and go, "Why did you let me do this?" And like, you said you were trans. I believed, So that's the hugest fear, like thinking like maybe it's not true. To dispel all sense of doubt of the veracity, the truth of your being, of your your gender identity. That was it. So no, I probably not until you made that pronouncement that I really spend too much time thinking about your gender identity or sexual orientation.
Yeah, and I know Mama expressed that fear a lot. That was definitely her biggest fear. I mean, she was worried for my safety too, obviously, as soon as I ever expressed that. But I remember wanting to come out pretty much right away, because I was so excited to have found a label that made sense for me, and she was so afraid of me attaching myself to that label, and then if I had wanted to detach myself from it later, it's very difficult to do that. It's a huge kind of title to put on yourself. So yeah, that makes sense. And that was also another question I had, was what was your biggest fear once I started transitioning, once I came out? So sounds like you pretty much answered.
Well, no, that's not it too.
Okay.
That was a fear. That was one of a big fears. And I think the other fear is just victimization.
Yeah.
Obviously, the transgender community is one of the most marginalized communities, and still, there's a lot of violence perpetrated against the transgender community. And I know you're smart, and I know you studied karate, and I know that but I still, no matter what, I think there's that fear of you being out on your own and running against some hate.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a huge fear. But yeah, both of those. And one is like, maybe it's not true, but if it is true, what if this causes her to be hurt?
I think that's a very relatable concern for a lot of parents of trans people. There's this split idea of, well, if we let this person transition and it turns out not to be the right thing for them, then there's going to be a great deal of regret and difficulty regressing with that. Or then the other problem is, if you don't let them and they were right to want that and they needed that, then there could be irreversible pain either way. So there's not really like an easy answer.
There's not. And then there's the lesser fears, and making sure that you're going to be happy, that you're going to be able to find a community where you might be able to find nice partners and friends and safe communities. Mm-hmm. Communities of people who are managing in a healthy way and not, abusing drugs and alcohol in a way to self-medicate, or things that will lead down a path of unfortunatality. Unfortunality.
I don't know if there's a noun form. Disfortune.
Misfortune.
Misfortune.
Yeah, a path of misfortune. That's it.
So before I came out as transgender,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like you had a solid understanding of what that meant, and if not, or if so, how did it develop after I came out, if at all?
That's a good question. I don't have like a brilliant memory about anything about the evolution of my life or what I thought of, And like I said, I've been very involved with gay men and women throughout the course of my career, but I hadn't ever known trans people. I think I had for a while a tough time wrapping my head around bisexuality. So, I don't know. I think that oftentimes, unless you have a personal connection with something, it's hard for you to understand it or really maybe even find the need to understand it. So I don't know that I ever felt this need to understand trans people in a way that, coming in so close contact with it has allowed me to, mature in that understanding of what a trans person is, what a trans life is, to be able to get me to allow me to explain it to other people and what it means. And I understood the dysphoria, and I just understood a lot of things going along, and I didn't really think about, and I think most people probably don't, what it is it like for the trans person to find their way, and how difficult is it to navigate not only through the transition but life afterwards. And now I've met so many wonderful trans people through PFLAG and through your associations, and seeing some ladies who have transitioned late in life, and how much joy it's brought them to be able to live their truth. And I definitely I have such a greater understanding of it, an appreciation for it, and compassion for all of the machinations that come with life as a transgender person, that I probably was pretty ignorant before, because it really hadn't touched my life in a way where I was immersed in it.
That makes sense. And I think that, I mean, I was extraordinarily ignorant towards what it meant to be transgender before I came out. I vaguely knew the term. I had heard it here and there, but I didn't really, I think my understanding of it was much more attached to the surgery component and not really the internal feeling, which is why it took me such a long time to grasp that it was a label for me, because you just didn't have, there wasn't much good exposure for a long, long time about the actual lived experiences and the more internal feeling, like you're talking about, of what it means to be trans. You get more of what's put out there. It's just what the people eventually go through, or how they relate to society as a category of person that exists in the media and in the world. But yeah, it took me forever, and I think I'm sure we've both met way more people since that are trans since I've come out, and gained a lot more exposure through television and through all sorts of things. So yeah.
I was just thinking about the Halloween where you were trick-or-treating with two other boys at the time, and all three of you are trans. And,
oh yeah.
I just thought, how odd is that? How coincidental is that one of our Halloween trips, we're going around, and three of the then who we thought were boys were all trans, and nobody knew it. And as it evolved, is there something in the candy?
Yeah.
Had I eaten some, who knows?
And we've talked about that, because I've never really mentioned this on this channel, but a surprising number of people from my childhood, around my age, a little bit older, we all ended up being trans women, and it feels so bizarre, but then maybe it's not so bizarre, because maybe there's some sort of magnetism that you find each other, and you connect on this subconscious level.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't have guessed it at the time, but
No.
it's pretty amazing to think about now.
It's a mass coincidence.
Yeah. I want to end it here, just because I think a lot of people end these kinds of videos this way. If you have just one piece of advice that you are able to give to any parent of a trans person, whether their kid has just come out or they've had a kid that's out for a while, what would you say? I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No,
with
it's
this
good. It's a good one. I think that like the word acceptance is really important, but I think mostly, I don't think your kid is going to come out to you as trans unless probably they're trans.
Yeah,
That's the one, because it's not. It's a difficult lifestyle, and I don't think you choose it whimsically or it's a phase. If your child has the strength and the bravery, and you've created a home where they feel comfortable in coming to you and saying, "Mom, Dad, I think I'm transgender," then the advice is you listen to them, and you explore it to the best of your ability with compassion and with acceptance, and you keep your fear to yourself, or with your spouse or the people that you trust, and you support that person, because it's a really, really difficult thing. And I think that, thank goodness that your mother and my ability to be open-minded, I guess, or whatever it is. You could have had worse parents for this. We're okay in that capacity, and I know that some trans people are going to bump up against parents who just will not be accepting. But believe me, trans parents of trans children, if you are not accepting, you are just going to make your child's life much more difficult. So if that's what your goal is, okay. But if your goal is for your child to have a happy life and an easy life and love themselves, you have to love them no matter what. And like I said, if they say they're trans, you should take that seriously, because it's probably true.
It's not an easy thing to say.
It's not an easy thing to say. You just don't go there, "Hey, I want to make a cake."
Yeah,
I'm an astronaut.
It's not a whimsical announcement. I think that was very beautifully said, and I hope if there are parents of trans people watching, they got to see that. So that was great. Thank
Cool.
you for being on my elaborate, fancy show.
Okay, no problem. I thought this was going to be about, what is it like growing up with a bullying heterosexual white father. So I'm glad it was much more comfortable to talk about you being trans than me being an asshole. So.
That's great.
So
That was
am I
never
allowed
my
to say
plan.
that on
You
the-
can say, yeah, I swear. I do.
I shouldn't though. I'm a school teacher.
As well.
If any of my
It's
kids
not-
are watching
it's
this,
summer.
I didn't
School's
say it's
out.
summer. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Go out and play. Quit watching the YouTube.
Yeah, well, yeah. Perfect. Good job.
Bye, America. Hey, I missed the high five. All right.
I thought you were